Agriculture contributing about 25% of Nigeria's GDP. We take a look at President Muhammadu Buhari's advice to Nigerians to go back to the farm. With the big question, is farming the answer?
And also, as the people of Zamfara State mourn, the president advises Nigerians to be patient. How does a nation react to the reported killing of about 200 of its citizens? Farms, and stressing on how important it is for Nigeria's economy to grow. And of course, we're going to be looking at that and asking if that truly is what is lacking in Nigeria. There are certain figures that we would also be looking at, and what level of support the Nigerian government truly has given to agriculture. And aside that, we're going to be taking a look at security in Zamfara State. How does a nation really and truly react to the death of 200 people, maybe even more? Silence from the presidency, silence from the National Assembly, and maybe also silence from its citizens. That makes also part of our discussions this morning. But before that, as always, we start with top trendings were released over the weekend. Of course, making it about 60 that have been released so far. It's an ongoing conversation, and of course, the reports say that they have been taken to the state capital for medical examination and debriefing. Of course, I'm guessing that they will also meet with the governor of the state.
Well, so as much as a lot of people would say it's actually a step in the right direction, but there are several questions surrounding it. That's number one. After 207 days, you have these persons regaining freedom. I remember vividly where a lot of appreciation has been given to security agencies, men of the forces, for the rescue effort that has been made. So the question here is, where are the abductors? I mean, those who captured this student. Is it that these persons just regained freedom? Did we pay any money to, allow these kids actually go through? Because these are some of the questions we need to, answer. And the question over time is, how come we constantly have these persons, these bandits, these kidnappers being emboldened on a daily basis, on a year-to-year basis, on a monthly basis? So some of this, yes, the whole effort is saying, we commend the security agencies and everybody for ensuring the rescue of these kids. But how come we have not been able to arrest them? Why?
Well, and these are good questions because, I think we've repeatedly said it that over time, in the last 10 years, maybe, plus, we still haven't, and I think one of the guests said it last week, that we still haven't been able to point to any actual terrorist leader or bandit leader that has been arrested and is currently being prosecuted or is being, is in jail. There's none. It makes absolutely no sense that a country that is dealing with this level of violence and killing and the likes has nobody, that currently is, standing trial, nobody who currently we can point to as a bandit leader or a terrorist leader that is standing trial. Yes, there are reports of them being killed here and there, but and some of all of that. So these are activity, and
just as we have forgotten about Leah Shaibu.
Absolutely.
So it's just first of all, I think that at some point you have the people being fatigued about some of the stories. So you have an incident happening, and after a while we move away from it. Mostly sometimes it becomes a social talk. We just talk about it, and that's the end. We'll probably just have one or two buzz on, the social media, and that's the end. There's no commitment, there's no action from the part of the people and from the government. I am curious, and I'm asking, with all of the fact that we constantly have people, regaining their freedom, with what premise are we looking at? Are we paying ransom? I know several times the government has, debunked the rumor that, ransom's not being paid. Or is it that those who are affected are the ones paying ransom for their kids and, their loved ones to be released? Mm-hmm. And so you constantly ask yourself, with the fact that schools have been attacked, for, a long time now, we constantly see the attack on schools. You want to ask yourself, what happened to the Safe School initiative that, was put out in 2014 and all? And because with all of these programs and policies, it's not just hearsay, it's not just mere statement. Resources have been released. So what happens to it? The essence of having, the School Safe initiative at the end of the day was to ensure that there's some sort of protection. These schools have perimeter fencing and what have you, because that some of these schools are in isolation. Not necessarily that, it doesn't stop the attacks and what have you. But I feel like we just pay lip service. It's just about We're saying, oh, we're fighting these people, we're combating it. And there's really no action. There's no honesty, there's no transparency in all that we see.
The Safe School Initiative, for me, is pretty much the same thing with the school feeding program. It has almost no effect in protecting the students or keeping the students in school, because this is another 30. So, I'm guessing that there are still some of them that are still in captivity, or maybe may never be found. And the Nigerian government doesn't seem to care.
How we care?
Because
Have we cared
in
about
a sane
anything?
society and in a sane country, this would make the headlines every day. And I remember someone who was quoting something that we're going to talk about later, and that is the Zamfara State incident. Someone who was quoting it and saying that when there was an incident in New Zealand or in the United States or in other societies, you would see their prime minister, their the chief of police in that state would constantly be on television every 6 hours max, explaining to people what's happening, giving citizens updates with regards, rescue efforts or, what has happened with the perpetrators of whatever crime that it was, until, that case is seemingly solved. We had 200 people killed, according to reports last week. We barely even spoke about it. You and I. We barely even spoke about it, in the news. And over the weekend, there's still no response from the Nigerian government to, with regards to the killing of those people. So how does that same Nigerian government really care about people who have been in captivity? I saw a report over the weekend also of some old elderly man somewhere in northern Nigeria who had to take off the roofing sheets on his property because he was trying to raise money to pay ransom for his son. And that's in response to some of the question you asked with regards if you're paying, if you're paying ransom or not. We would have gone till March, April, June, September 2022, and nobody would remember that there are people in captivity except the parents of these children.
No, so it's become very common in our society where you see that as long as it doesn't happen to you. I remember a time where I was on the street and then of course trying to get questioned, the Vox Pop and all of that. And you hear people telling you, as long as it doesn't affect me and my family, it's not my business.
Yeah,
so we have become, very self-centered people as individuals. And of course, we constitute the entire society and at large Nigeria. So you have, pockets of people. You have people like this with this ideology who would say that it's not my business. As long as it does not affect me, it does not affect, I'm able to, afford the basic things of life. Was my business. And that's why you know how we also think about it's not my business who becomes the president and who becomes the governor of a state, but whether or not we want to agree that government policy would always affect us. And so some people would tell you, for the religion that say we don't operate in this economy. You do, darling, operate in this economy. As long as yes, it's true, because when the government come with some kind of policies that would truncate your business, you would understand that you operate in this economy.
What pastor said that?
No, you have a lot of people who just begin to make proclamations. I do not live in this economy. I do not operate under this economy. You operate.
Bear in mind, and this is where we're going
to...
something else that happened in Brazil. Bear in mind that, while 200 people were reportedly killed in Zamfara over the weekend, President Muhammadu Buhari, who's the commander-in-chief, said nothing. The only news from him is that, he met with former President Goodluck Jonathan. The vice president was in Bauchi for some occasion.
I think he's currently in Ghana or something.
Well, I'm just saying over the weekend, he, a couple of days after or a day after that, happened, he was in some event in Bauchi, celebrating. I'm not sure what event that was or what celebration that was or what party that was. And that just tells you the mindset of the people who are in power. And of course, Bobrisky was chased out of Benin. Those were the conversations, across Nigeria, while 200 people lost their lives in Zamfara. And
up until this moment, you have the 19 governors, of a northern state. Yeah. No statement whatsoever, from all of, from these governors. It just shows you, like I constantly would say that, we have lost humanity. We have lost it.
Let's move away from Nigeria. We will be back to Brazil now, where a very shocking, triggering video was, of course, put out over the weekend of a very large rock that collapsed on two boats, people who were holidaying somewhere on the beaches in Brazil. I hope that we have that video clip to share with you. It's reported that it led to the loss of about 7 lives, about 10 people were injured, and currently about 3 are missing. Yes, that's it. Really shocking. Some people have blamed climate change. Others have said Mother Earth is angry maybe, somebody whispered something to the rock that wasn't really, really nice, or they threw a, water bottle at the rock or something. I'm not sure what exactly happened there, but it has led to the loss of about 7 lives. And, still reported, some of them very likely hospitalized, hoping that they would recover. But very, very, very shocking video there. I'm not even sure how anybody would have reacted in a situation like that if you need to, steer the boat sideways to avoid the impact. But this is really, 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 really shocking.
It just reminds me of an experience that, I think way back I had a friend, a young friend, who, experienced and escaped this, because I think out of 6 of them, 4 made it out and 2 actually died. Quite unfortunate. And, at this point, you begin to ask yourself, who should we blame that on? Climate change? Some people would say it would be village people, in our panels here would say it would be village people. But for me, because for me, usually, I just have this wild, crazy thought. I would probably not want to go close to the rocks. I just want to stay, very far. And even if you want to stay far off, you could also have, a crocodile come through or something.
These aren't things that you can ever expect, or you can,
True, it's an accident, and it's very sad.
Rocks don't just fall off, from, formation. It's different thing if it's a landslide or if it's an avalanche or something like that. Those are different. You can tell that there are certain triggers for an avalanche. But for a situation like this, you can't expect it. Nobody, would expect that a rock would really just fall into the water. So it's just an unfortunate incident for those persons. And of course, we wish the very best to their families. Condolences to the families of those persons who lost their lives over there.
Well, so we just move on to another issue again, just a similar case with that of Sylvester Romani. I mean, we're still dealing with the, before they could contact the parents. I mean, so that's the story, that he couldn't actually, his parents were not contacted because they insisted that he had to finish. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know if I'd say it's fortunately, the young lad actually had a brother or cousin in the school who found the way, to put a call across to the principal of the school, has come out to deny all of that, saying that was not the case. The boy was very fine, hale and hearty. He was about his business. And even though he took ill, he had malaria, he was treated by a proper nurse in the school. And after all of that, then he took ill. So the stories are usually not, the parents are actually pushing and advocating for justice. How do you even explain all of that? Because in cases like this, it is almost impossible for you to begin to have the evidence, to put together, to press charges and ask for justice. But you can only imagine what, parents will be going through, the family, the sadness in their heart. And it's just, what really breaks my heart in all of this is the fact that we pay so much attention. So we make the laws. And I ask myself, if you make these laws were created. They were not created by spirit. Human beings make these laws. And so if you have a semester where a student has to write an exam, and then the child actually takes ill, is it compulsory that the child has to write the exam, that after that time, there's no provision, for the child to sit for that exam? Must the child take the exam? He has to finish the exam first before. I mean, haven't we, because we're evolving, we need to begin to, in our institutions, make consideration for all of this. So children who would probably fall ill and can't make it for the exam, they should also have provision for having special exams conducted, extra exams for them, because health is wealth. It's only the living that can write exams. So that's why I always say that as much as it is you fall ill, it's important to pay attention to your health. Because if you're not alive, you can't be doing the job, you can't go to school, put out, the consents of the children. But that's not the case anymore. Is it the parents are not advocating for PTAs? Are they too busy to attend? Or the school is not even ensuring that, you have PTA meetings anymore? So all of this, we can't constantly, and it brings us back to the fact that we don't pay attention to the lives of human beings. And I always say that, we're just reflecting in 2022, and schools also, and government would also ensure that
Nigeria has a very high rate with regards deaths from malaria and typhoid and the likes. And this might just be one of those. But yes, it is important to know and ask the questions with regards how much, healthcare, medical assistance that he was given
in school,
while he was ill. If he was denied medical assistance, if he was denied any of that, does the school even have a proper, healthcare center? And some of all of that. Those are the questions that I believe that, must be asked at a time like this. It's not, like he was murdered or anything.
No, he wasn't.
But there might be some bits of negligence here and there, and questions need to be asked properly, with regards to the healthcare system that exists in the school on the school. Are those kids protected? And these are, these are things that you would expect, that the Ministry of Education in every state, would be able to cross-check with every school. The same way that they go around, asking that, there's fire extinguishers and there's certain things that just need to be in place before a parent or a citizen is able to entrust the lives of their child into, a school. But we don't do enough of those checks. We don't verify some of all those things. And in situations like this, are situations where a school like that should be highly sanctioned if it is found out that they don't have proper Medicare for students that they are meant to be taking care of. But that's not the society that we live in. We're only going to say, it's unfortunate and, everybody moves on. But those are the questions. And I feel like the Nigerian government needs to make an example of certain schools across Nigeria, close them down temporarily, shut them down for a session, shut them down for a term, so that by the time they lose the amount of, school fees money for 1 year or 2 years, then they would sit up and ensure that they understand the value of every life that is put in their care. But once again, this one, we still need to get clarity on exactly what played out in the situation. And if there was any foul play or not. Doesn't seem like there was. Might just be one unfortunate incident where malaria or some of those, common illnesses across Nigeria, unfortunately took the life of this child. If there was foul play, if it was as a result of negligence, below par medical care in the school, then some of those questions need to be asked.
Yeah, true. All of that. Like I rightly mentioned, we're able to understand what exactly the situation is. But there are several cases where you would want to agree that this has actually happened, where we feel like, it's period for examination and then the kid has to. I'm saying that schools would need to begin to understand that it's important that, you only need to be alive. I mean, health is very important. Maybe medical care in school. You don't necessarily need to call the parents to come and take your child. But
in
most cases, you find out that that's what happens. I mean, this is not hearsay, firsthand. So it feels like some of the schools don't have, proper medical care. I mean, they have,
that's proper, because
you begin to ask yourself, do we even need to put a call across, to the parents to come pick when they can be treated in school?
But the parents should be notified that your child is not feeling very well. If it's something that is an emergency, if it's on that level where they need the parents to come take their child to a general hospital or to a better hospital, then yes, they will be told. But if it's a slight fever, if it's something that is not so serious that the school's healthcare center can handle, then they should handle it, but the parents must be told. So these are where we need to question, where the parents are at that age, or at any age, to be honest. Those are our top trending stories this morning. We'll take a short break and, of course, come back with not today in history now, off the press, and share with you what major stories are making headlines across Nigeria today. We'll be back.
The Master this week is brought to you by the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency. Statutorily mandated to ensure that there is regulation and promotion of matters affecting our waters. The Master bears responsibility for search and rescue, shipping development, and ship registration.
NIMASA This Week, the voice of maritime, showing on this channel.
Nigeria's Niger Delta region, from where the black gold fuels Africa's largest economy, where the lines between wealth and poverty has never been thinner. Conflicts, poverty, insecurity, and environmental challenges daily confront the region. How can the Niger Delta story be changed for the better?
Join Mamude Akuga at 9 p.m. every Friday evening on PlusTvAfrica as he probes deep in search of solutions.
Inside the Niger Delta with Mamude Akuga, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region.
Welcome back to The Breakfast and Plus TV Africa. We'll take you through the pages of our national dailies. We call it Off the Press. And as always, we'll have a guest join the conversation. But I'd like to start off with the leadership newspaper. The emphasis this morning will be on the top stories. Let's look at the banner caption for the leadership newspaper. 2023 presidency. Sanusi makes case for competence, merit, as politicians review zoning argument. Ohaneze opposes zoning arrangement and warns PDP will collapse if party zones ticket to North. Says Jonathan lost 2015 election for not respecting zoning agreement. Stakeholders push for lower borrowing to fund budget. Was talking about the 2022 budget here. And Senate traces defunct PHCN's hidden 14 billion naira in banks. APC crisis, Bonita meets Gombe stakeholders.
Right to the Nigerian Tribune. Big story there says APC may adopt consensus ahead of February convention. How federal government spent about 56.9 billion naira on women and youths in 2021 fiscal year. Bandits release additional 30 students in Kebbi after 6 months. A man, 76, fake security agent in NDLEA net over imported drug chocolates, cookies, and others. And process to authenticate next Olubadan. Those are the big stories on the Tribune this morning.
Vaccination site in market, others. Vaccination grounds at 4.2%, 38 deaths recorded first week January. This the bold headline and the banner, the riders you find underneath the bold caption. Capital importation falls by 1.68 trillion naira, says CBN. And federal government issues Lassa fever alert. Orders, that's according to a report. And just before we move away, you also find commercial bus driver stabs lover's husband to death in Ogun. And Grandpa Brazil returnee, undergraduate arrested with cocaine and tramadol and cannabis. Now, this is some of the headlines on the Punch newspaper this morning.
Stabs a lover's husband to death.
Yes, I think I saw that story yesterday. Sad one.
Some people don't know their place. Moving on to the daily independent newspapers. Let's see what we can find over there. The big story, of course, is on your screen. It says, 2022 budget. Onshore revenue raises risk of higher fiscal deficit. Nigeria's debt burden widens amid poor budget funding, say analysts. Say the country's debt service to revenue ratio highest in Africa. It will be a grave mistake not to release Kanu, says IPOB. 14.7 billion naira defunct PHC and Fari should back the APC to zone presidency to Southeast, says VON Director General. Before our guest joins us, just to quickly mention that, once again, one of the things that we're going to be talking about today is the killing of about 200 people in Zamfara State a few days ago. And it is not even in the headlines this morning. And that basically is telling you how Nigerians and the Nigerian government has moved on, after 200 of its citizens were killed. And I'm not sure how that makes anything that you choose to give them. It didn't even make the papers. And I saw someone share his thoughts yesterday, asking, what country really does this type of thing happen? In what nation across the world do you hear of 200 deaths in 48 hours, 96 hours? And everybody just moves on. It doesn't even make headlines 48 hours later. And it's not a country that is necessarily, has agreed that it is at war. Situations that you can imagine them. We are at war with and still has not put out any statement, any word with regards to the death of 200 citizens. I think it was on Friday that it was the report that 147 bodies had been found. Some of the papers said 143 bodies had been found. On Saturday, the Nigerian government in the news, agreed that 58 people were killed according to government figures. But those people who are on ground will say completely different, say otherwise. It's way more than 58. But even if it's 7, even if it's 3,
even if it's 1,
even if it's 1 person, 200 Nigerian citizens passed, 200 people doesn't even address the Nigerian citizens with regards how disastrous this is. This is the same Nigerian government, and these are the same persons in government today that ran down the previous government because of its own failures with regards to insecurity. The persons today that you hear about that are currently in government and those who are maybe also quiet, there's one of them that currently is now hosting vlogs and interviewing persons every week. But those voices were extremely loud when there were insecurity challenges in the previous government. And it's not saying, that this is not a PDP
comparison,
thing.
yeah.
But how come we can lose 200 persons?
That number, very unfortunate. It continues to just shows that we do not have regard for human life and reality outside of Nigeria, right? And we constantly will be screaming on top of our voices and saying, oh, did these persons fall from the sky? These are some of the questions you want to begin to ask yourself. Did this person fall from the sky? Because I feel that over time, the fact that the body language of the government across board has not been in such that it wants to address the issue has continued to embolden these persons, these terrorists, these bandits to continue, to go on, perpetrating all of this evil. Okay. If you have a case where this has happened and you have people being arrested, is it a question of the fact that you have the infrastructure not functional? Is it that the structures are not, they don't have the capacity to ensure and enforce arrest?
Well,
these are some of the concerns.
Let's bring in Opunabo Inkotaria, who's joined us via Zoom. Good morning, Mr. Inkotaria. First, and ask what exactly, we're doing, as a country. Where are we going, and at what level will it become too much? Because, one of the things that you mentioned earlier was fatigue. The Nigerians have heard these stories too many times. We've dealt with death too many times. And so it's no longer, a trending story. Mr. Inkotaria, good morning once again. Can you hear us?
Good morning. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, loud and clear. Thanks for joining us. So I want us to start with what we're currently discussing, and that is the silence from the Nigerian government, from the Nigerian people, from the National Assembly, everybody who really, and of course includes governors in the north, after the death of about 200 persons in Zamfara.
Country. Anything more, because we have a government like I go for the rich. Whatever happens to the poor is your bloody business. Whatever happens to the masses is your bloody business. But if one minister dies today or loses everybody close to him, you'll see all of them rallying around. So that is a situation, a pathetic situation.
If you're with regards journalists and the media and the responsibility that they should have, it's not made headlines this morning, and that's the point. Most of the stories this morning in the news.
That's what I said. I enjoin journalists not to repudiate the obligations. That's what I said.
Yeah.
I said they should not. Yeah, because it's definitely repudiated. You're checking your responsibility to the society, because that is what you owe the society. Any information of national interest, of human interest. Consequence. I don't want to go into your paper anymore. It could take the form of a bottom strip or whatever, but it will not sell your paper anymore because people are not to it. The deaths take place on daily basis, if not hourly basis, in this country, and we have an insensitive government. So I don't even expect the state. In fact, the government will not want to say anything on that because they believe that will be further publicizing it. So they want to remain mute. Again, override, decloud our reasoning, our sense of judgment. You see, the government will come out to make it
ahead of the 2023 elections, and you have the fact that Sanusi is making, serious argument for competence and merit, and why some politicians, and he's, pushing for competence rather than we just zoning.
Competence as against zoning. But you see, we live in the northern zone. So I want credible persons, I want competent persons, but we cannot just dismiss zoning, because the essence of zoning